At CA Stories, we've covered some truly outrageous tales, but this one, it tops them all. Never did I imagine I'd witness an HOA president break down sobbing in front of police all because my wife wouldn't join her petty power circle. What began as bogus violation notices and empty threats quickly spiraled out of control. But Nancy, our HOA queen bee, had no clue who she was up against. When the final HOA meeting rolled around, everything turned on its head. Want to know how it all unfolded? Drop a comment, because things are about to get wild. My wife Olivia and I finally bought our dream home in Willowbrook, after 8 years of saving. It's the kind of postcard-perfect suburb where the streets are lined with trees, lawns are meticulously trimmed, and neighbors wave like extras in a sitcom. Olivia's a government employee, that's all most folks really need to know. She's composed, razor-sharp, and has an uncanny ability to read people skills honed through years in high-stress, higher-risk environments. Me, I'm Alex, 28, a cybersecurity engineer who'd rather deal with firewalls than nosy neighbors. I assumed suburban life would be painfully predictable. But something about Willowbrook felt off, like beneath the polished exterior. Secrets lurked. The place had the sterile charm of a movie set, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was hiding just beneath the surface. Our first HOA meeting was at the community center, a soul-sucking beige building with buzzing fluorescent lights and squeaky metal chairs. That's where I met Nancy Thompson, and from the moment she walked in, I had a bad feeling. Picture a 55-year-old woman in a flawlessly tailored navy suit, blonde hair styled with military precision, and eyes that darted around the room, silently judging every detail. When she entered, all chatter ceased instantly. She moved with a command that seemed embedded into the wall's unspoken authority. No one dared question. The air grew heavier, almost oppressive, and the buzzing lights seemed louder with every word she spoke. The meeting. Typical HOA nonsense, trash pickup schedules, complaints about unleashed pets, debates over lawn decorations. But Nancy ran it like a Fortune 500 boardroom. Anyone who dared raise a hand got a look from her like they were interrupting a CEO. She'd nod along, clearly not listening, then shut people down using obscure bylaw references. The residents spoke in hushed tones, barely meeting her eyes. "I trust you've reviewed our guidelines, Alex," she asked, her voice as precise as a scalpel. Her words made my skin crawl. Conversations around us stopped cold as she approached. She carried herself like royalty and likely believed she was. I couldn't even pinpoint why I felt so uneasy. Maybe it was how she seemed to catalog people mentally, like collecting data for future use. Her smile was empty, never reaching her eyes. She moved like a predator, graceful but calculating. Olivia leaned in and whispered, "You feel that too?" Something's off about her. Her words gave me chills. I thought she might be overanalyzing, but she'd faced real threats before. If her alarm bells were ringing, I needed to listen. Right. Then, Nancy made her pitch. "Olivia, with your government background, you'd be ideal as our HOA secretary. We need someone who truly understands procedure." The way she said government background was unsettling, like she knew more than she should. We hadn't shared anything about Olivia's job. Olivia shot me a glance, then gave Nancy a polite but firm smile. "I appreciate the offer, but my work schedule doesn't allow for HOA commitments." She didn't mention the FBI, but her eyes sent a warning. A subtle tension gripped the room, something I couldn't quite name, but it didn't feel safe. Nancy didn't look surprised, but her icy response churned my gut. I caught a fleeting glimpse of something darker in her expression. "I trust you'll reconsider. Willowbrook thrives on engagement, and those who don't participate often face ... complications." That wasn't a suggestion, it was a veiled threat. She leaned in slightly, her voice lowering, the weight of her words pressing down like a warning. Everyone else stayed silent as if they knew exactly what complications meant. I stared at her. Who talks to new neighbors like that? On our way out, Nancy intercepted us near the door, like a predator cutting off its prey. "I've been president here 6 years. Sometimes people need a nudge to become team players." The word nudge made my skin crawl. Her tone was laced with something sinister, like she was in on a joke only she understood. On our walk home, Olivia said something that stuck. She's never heard the word no in her life, and I don't think she'll take it well. I hoped Nancy was just an overbearing busybody, but deep down, I knew Olivia was right. There was menace in Nancy's gaze, like she saw us as problems to eliminate. Later that night, I grabbed a drink in the kitchen and glanced out the window. Nancy stood at her upstairs window, binoculars trained on our house. When she realized I saw her, she didn't flinch or look away, kept staring like it was normal. A chill ran down my spine. Who does that? I called Olivia over, but by the time she looked, Nancy was gone. Did I imagine that, or is she really watching us? I asked. The whole thing felt surreal, like we'd walked into a twisted suburban horror movie. As if to confirm it, we found a business card on our doorstep with a note. Following up on our chat, "Hope you reconsider." Who leaves business cards at neighbors' homes like a door-to-door salesperson? Olivia took one look and said, "She's marking territory." It wasn't just a note, it was a warning. Nancy was playing a psychological game, and she was all in. The card was embossed, absurdly expensive proof she was willing to invest heavily in her little power struggle. In hindsight, I should have known. Nancy wasn't just a control freak, she was someone who refused to be told no. And I had no idea just how far she'd go to change that. 3 days later, Nancy called. Her voice was sickeningly sweet. Rehearsed. Olivia, darling, we have an exciting project, and your skills would be invaluable. It sounded like a request, but it wasn't. Every word was calculated, every pause deliberate. Olivia, though wary, agreed to go, wanting to see what Nancy was really up to. I offered to go too, but Olivia insisted she could handle it. I tried to dismiss it, but deep down I knew this wasn't just tea and cookies. It was the calm before the storm. Nancy's home was straight out of a design catalog, flawless, cold, and eerily lifeless. She'd prepared an extravagant tea spread, complete with fine china and delicately arranged pastries. "Please, make yourself comfortable," she cooed, dressed in pearls and a floral dress that likely cost more than my car. "I'm thrilled to share my vision with someone of your caliber." The way she emphasized caliber and experience felt loaded, almost coded. Every movement was rehearsed. But here's the kicker: no mention of a garden project. None. Instead, Nancy launched into a self-congratulatory presentation about her achievements. As HOA president, highlighting how she removed problematic residents and maintained property values. Who says that casually? Olivia later told me Nancy had a photo album, meticulously organized, documenting every change in the neighborhood like a surveillance dossier. Notes in her exact handwriting tracked who painted, trim, installed mailboxes, or altered landscaping without HOA permission. Some photos looked like they were taken from hidden spots, proof Nancy had been spying for years. Families who used to live here, she'd say, learned the value of community standards. She talked about them like they were people. Then she turned to Olivia. "You'd be an asset here. Someone who understands procedure." Her tone sharpened. Olivia politely declined, and Nancy's demeanor shifted. "You're underestimating the situation. People avoid responsibility when they doubt their abilities." It was a manipulative dig meant to provoke. But Olivia didn't flinch. "My career demands my full focus," she replied firmly. Nancy's mask dropped. "Let me be frank. Families who refuse to comply often experience ... complications. I'd hate for that to happen to you or Alex." That was no longer a threat, it was a declaration. Olivia said. Nancy's hands trembled slightly as she handed her a brochure. Frustration or something darker? Olivia's response was pure steel. "If any issues arise, we'll resolve them, legally and transparently." Nancy's eyes flashed with fury before she forced on another fake smile. Olivia said nothing more, but the tension was palpable. Nancy clearly had reason to avoid legal scrutiny. On our walk home, I asked, "What was that really about?" Olivia's jaw tightened. "She just threatened us. And people like her escalate quickly when challenged. I hoped we could ignore her. But I knew better." "What do we do?" I asked. Olivia's voice was calm, resolute. "We document everything and be ready." Just as we left, Nancy's eyes narrowed. "This is about more than HOA politics. People who don't fit in ... are removed." That word "removed" echoed in my mind. It wasn't about moving out. It was about being forced out. Walking home, I knew just been drawn into a war, and Nancy didn't play by any rules we knew. A week later, we received our first official HOA notice, like a legal trap, in our mailbox. At first, I laughed until I read the details. It wasn't petty. It was a warning. A rose bush allegedly violated height limits. This wasn't about landscaping, it was the opening shot. We were hit with a $100 daily fine until the supposed violation was addressed. My frustration quickly turned to rage. This rosebush was barely 3 feet tall. How on earth could that be a violation? The longer I examined the notice, the clearer it became. This wasn't about gardening, it was about dominance. Nancy Thompson needed to prove who controlled Willowbrook. The notice looked disturbingly official, with HOA letterhead, case numbers, and references to obscure clauses from the community handbook. Nancy had clearly poured time and effort into crafting a facade of legitimacy. She even attached photos of the rosebush from multiple angles, complete with measurements and annotations, like she was preparing evidence for a trial. It would have been impressive if it wasn't so absurd that the photos had timestamps and looked professionally formatted, implying Nancy had invested resources into this targeted harassment. I couldn't understand how someone could spend so much energy tormenting neighbors over something so petty. But there it was, proof, printed on expensive paper that probably cost more than the rosebush itself. Olivia just stared at the paperwork in silence, her expression cold and analytical. Finally, she spoke. "Alex, we need to make sure this isn't just the opening shot." Her tone was calm but serious, and it hit me hard. She pulled out the HOA's hefty 200-page rulebook and began combing through it like she was gathering evidence for a case, because in her mind, That's exactly what it was. I wanted to downplay it, convince her it was all nonsense. But deep down I sensed the truth. Nancy wasn't just picking on us. This was her way of initiating some twisted game. Olivia's approach was meticulous. "Alex, come look," she said after an hour. Pointing to a paragraph, section 15.3 clearly says height restrictions only apply within 2 meters of the curb. Our rosebush is 3.7 meters away. Watching her dismantle Nancy's argument with such precision was incredible. "Wait, you read the entire thing?" I asked, amazed. "It's second nature," she replied. "You have to know the rules before someone tries to weaponize them against you." That was Olivia, always 3 steps ahead. She documented everything, cross-referenced every clause, and prepared a formal response that could have passed for a court submission. She composed a reply that sliced through Nancy's accusations with surgical accuracy. Olivia cited every relevant regulation, attached photos with measurements, and concluded with a line that struck with polite ferocity. "I trust the board will review this matter and consider updating resident education materials to avoid future confusion." Diplomatically devastating. It called Nancy's competence into question without providing any ammunition for retaliation. 2 days later, the HOA retracted the violation and issued a half-hearted apology, blaming an administrative oversight. I was elated, but Olivia was visibly uneasy. Nancy just got publicly embarrassed by someone she thought she could intimidate. That makes her dangerous. "Alex." Nancy had mastered the art of cloaking threats and civility, but Olivia's composed response had cracked that veneer. When Olivia spoke with calm authority, I saw Nancy's confident smile falter. She wasn't used to resistance, and it showed. The retraction notice was terse, clearly written through clenched teeth. Nancy was furious, and that concerned me more than the violation ever did. The next day, another notice arrived, this time accusing us of violating community aesthetic standards with our exterior paint color. Our house was painted the exact same shade of beige as half the neighborhood. What's next? Complaints about our grass being too green. Olivia examined the notice and quietly began photographing the house. "She's testing us," she said. "She'll keep fabricating violations until we either leave or make a mistake she can exploit." Nancy had escalated. Each notice was more absurd than the last, but all were packaged with the same professional flair, making them look authentic. The morning after, another violation showed up, this time about our mailbox. It felt like we were being slowly suffocated under a pile of nonsense. But we weren't backing down. Nancy was clearly waging a campaign of psychological warfare through official HOA channels. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling we had either won a critical battle or unknowingly started a war. Saturday afternoon brought a momentary peace. I was playing games on the couch. Olivia was in the kitchen, the scent of her simmering pasta sauce filling the air. Then a knock shattered the quiet. It wasn't friendly. The force behind it sent a chill down my spine. Another knock, louder, more urgent. Olivia moved toward the door, and I caught her eyes. She felt it too. We weren't expecting anyone. 2 police officers stood outside, expressionless and formal. Officer Johnson introduced himself and Officer Davis. "We received a report from Ms. Thompson about suspicious activity here." His tone was clipped, rehearsed. A patrol car idled in our driveway, lights still flashing. Davis read from a notepad. "Ms. Thompson reported strong chemical odors and loud noises from your property. She's concerned illegal activity may be involved." I nearly laughed. The only chemical smell was Olivia's vanilla candle and the loud noises, my video games. But this wasn't funny. Nancy had actually called the cops on us. What was she trying to prove? Olivia stayed calm, her voice composed. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The tension thickened. Johnson continued. "She also mentioned repeated HOA violations and non-compliance. She's concerned about neighborhood safety." Nancy had convinced them we were dangerous because we wouldn't join her little club. I felt my heart race. Then Olivia dropped the bomb. "Honey, I'm so glad I submitted that international weapons trafficking case report yesterday. This would have been awful timing otherwise." The officers stiffened, eyes wide. Davis asked cautiously, "Ma'am, are you in law enforcement?" Olivia pulled out her ID. "Special Agent Olivia Miller, FBI, Pacific Northwest Division." The officers visibly shifted, snapping to attention. "Agent Miller, we apologize for this incident," Johnson said. "We'll be discussing this with Ms. Thompson immediately." Olivia remained firm. "Please ensure proper handling. False reports waste police resources." Across the street, Nancy watched from her window, her face pale with shock. She had no idea she'd been targeting a federal agent. Her expression said it all, pure horror. After the officers left, I looked at Olivia in awe. "You just ended that with one sentence." She smiled grimly. "Nancy picked the wrong target. But now she knows who I am. This isn't over." She escalated. Tuesday, a heavy envelope arrived, sealed and ominous. Inside was a demand: pay $5,000 or face a lawsuit. My stomach dropped. "For days post police visit, we got a letter from Morrison and Associates. $5,000 in penalties for community disruption, non-compliance, and interference with board operations. Pay within 7 days or face court. $5 grand, I said, stunned. For what? Living here and not joining her power trip. Nancy had hired a lawyer. The letter was dense with legal jargon, citing obscure HOA rules. Morrison claimed, we harmed property values and caused discord. Anyone else might have paid just to avoid the stress. But not us. Olivia didn't even blink. Her eyes were locked in, scanning each page of the letter with the precision of a surgeon. This is a scare tactic, she said calmly. They're hoping we cave. But that's not going to happen. While I was spiraling over the thought of mounting legal costs, Olivia was already in full-on investigation mode. For the next 2 days, she dug into every possible detail about David Morrison, his career history, his legal record, everything. She left no angle unexplored. Her findings. He'd only been practicing law for 3 years, mostly focused on real estate cases. He was currently angling for a partnership at his firm and had a known pattern of backing down when confronted by experienced legal professionals. I watched as Olivia opened her laptop and began typing at lightning speed. There are loopholes in this, she murmured, and I'm going to tear them apart. Her calmness gave me a sense of relief. She glanced at me. Nancy would pick someone like him, ambitious, eager for billable hours, and clueless that he's about to go up against someone who understands federal law inside and out. I couldn't help but admire the way she was analyzing our adversary. Meanwhile, I kept thinking about Nancy, the expression she wore when Olivia completely shut her down at the last HOA meeting. Nancy was relentless, and now she'd called in legal reinforcements. Olivia drafted a reply letter with flawless legal precision. It didn't read like something from a panicked homeowner. It read like it was authored by a seasoned legal expert who had done this 1,000 times before. She dismantled Morrison's arguments point by point, exposing 4 key miscalculations in their supposed penalty amounts, citing specific legal precedents on homeowner rights and the limits of HOA authority. Then she added one particularly cutting line delivered with perfect professionalism. I trust an attorney of your standing would prefer not to pursue a legally weak case, especially given how it might affect your reputation and partnership goals. It was brilliant, subtly threatening his career without making any direct threats. Olivia also enclosed her FBI business card and a brief professional summary, not to boast, but to establish her legal authority and make it crystal clear she wasn't someone to be underestimated. Watching her work, I felt a cold wave of realization. We were in way over our heads. The next day, Morrison called. His tone was completely different, apologetic, even a little embarrassed. Agent Miller, after a more detailed review of the situation, we believe there's been a considerable misunderstanding. We're retracting all financial demands immediately, and deeply regret any inconvenience this may have caused. He paused, then added, and if you ever need legal assistance in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out. I nearly burst out laughing at his attempt to turn a disaster into a networking opportunity. But what caught our attention even more was Olivia's next question. Just out of curiosity, how was Ms. Thompson planning to pay your firm for this? Morrison hesitated, then answered. She paid in cash. Not something we see often. 2 days later, we received another letter, this one more serious than the last. A demand for $10,000, with the clear message, pay or face consequences. But this time, the letter came from an entirely new law firm. Nancy had hired someone else, evidently paying multiple attorneys with cash in her frantic search for someone who would take her case. Cash payments for legal work. That raised red flags for both of us. Why avoid a paper trail unless she had something to hide? She's lost her biggest tools, calling the cops and legal threats, Olivia said. People like that, when cornered, tend to get dirtier. The following morning, a shadow crossed our driveway. Nancy was standing on our porch, arms folded, lips curled in a tight, icy grin. I trust we won't be making this any more difficult than it needs to be, she said, her voice sharp as ice. I didn't want to think about what dirtier meant, coming from Nancy Thompson. What does that mean? I asked Olivia. Her expression darkened. She's going to try character assassination. If she can't beat us with rules, she'll try to destroy our reputation in the community. That evening, I got a call from a neighbor down the street. Hey, Alex, just a heads up, Nancy's been asking around. Really strange questions about you and Olivia. I looked out the window, watching Nancy walk away, and for the first time, fear took root. This wasn't just a feud anymore. It was a full-on war. We have moves we can make, Olivia said, though I could see she was thinking about possible exits. I wasn't sure we had any. Have you ever had someone try to ruin your name simply because they couldn't beat you fairly? I thought we had one, but Olivia's warning echoed in my mind. Nancy was just getting started. At first, I thought it was just petty gossip until I discovered the private Facebook group Nancy had created, Willowbrook Community Safety. It was a coordinated smear campaign. Post by post, she painted us as a threat. She didn't name us, but it was obvious. The posts were poison disguised as concern. With federal agents living among us, is our privacy at risk? Are outsiders changing the dynamic of our close-knit neighborhood? She posted articles about government surveillance, suggesting we were dangerous intruders, threatening everyone's safety. She was using fear to isolate us, turning neighbors into strangers. People started avoiding us. Mrs. Patterson, who always waved, now crossed the street when she saw me. Even the mailman seemed uneasy. In just 2 weeks, the neighborhood felt colder, like a place we no longer belonged. Delivery drivers double-checked addresses before dropping packages. Kids avoided our house like it was haunted. One night I found Olivia staring out the window, watching those kids walk by in silence, even avoiding our dog. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't answer for a long time. Then softly, "I've gone toe-to-toe with arms dealers, crime bosses, and terrorists. But having neighbors hate us over lies, that hurts more than I expected." Her voice trembled, and I burned with rage at Nancy's cruelty. The worst part, no one bothered to fact-check any of it. But Olivia wasn't one to stay down. The next morning, she was on a mission digging into Nancy's past with the precision of a federal agent. "I'm done playing defense. Alex, it's time to see what Nancy Thompson's hiding." She uncovered a pattern: families pressured to move after clashing with Nancy, HOA elections manipulated through bogus disqualifications, and shady finances that didn't add up. Finally, my cyber skills came in handy. We found payment records and invoices that were off. "Look at this." Olivia pointed at her screen. "Nancy claims $8,000 for landscaping, but the contractor says he charged $3,500. Where's the other $4,500? And this $5,000 for a community center roof repair?" I checked. That roof hasn't been touched in years. But Nancy bought a $5,000 spa package on that same date. She wasn't just power hungry, she was stealing from everyone and using intimidation to hide it. The signs were everywhere once we knew what to look for: phone vendors, inflated costs, phantom repairs. Nancy was funneling HOA money into her own pocket. She had to keep control, so no one could see where the money really went. Standing in our yard, I realized we weren't being turned on, we were already outcasts. But Olivia had a plan. Staring at the damning financials spread across the kitchen table, it hit me. This wasn't just HOA corruption. It was criminal and could land Nancy in federal prison. I'd feared this moment. Nancy had built an empire of fear. Now, at the annual HOA meeting, she was about to double down. She strolled into the community center in designer clothes, exuding confidence, carrying her speech. She had no idea what was coming. Her address hit all the usual notes: success, high standards, with thinly veiled jabs at non-participating residents. Nancy preached about fiscal responsibility and transparency, with the arrogance of someone who thought she was untouchable. Charts, graphs, numbers, every word a lie, a cover for theft. When she opened the floor for questions, Olivia stood calm, focused. "I have questions about financial accountability in our HOA." Nancy's smile faltered, but she tried to hold her ground. "Of course, dear, we're completely transparent." Olivia walked to the front and connected her laptop. "Then let's explain some irregularities." The room went silent. The first slide appeared. $75,000 collected. $73,000 spent. But landscaping cost $8,000. The contractor confirmed it was $3,500. "Where's the rest?" Nancy turned pale. This wasn't just a neighbor, it was an FBI agent exposing her. $5,000 for roof repairs. Olivia said, "No repairs done. But here's a receipt, $5,000 luxury spa package. Same date." The crowd gasped. One by one, Olivia displayed receipts, forged invoices, unauthorized payments, all tied to Nancy. Nancy's composure crumbled. "She's lying. This is retaliation." Olivia's voice was cold. "These are official records with your name and signature. Would you like to challenge them in court?" The room erupted. Neighbors who'd stayed silent now spoke. "That's why pool fees doubled. You stole the playground money." Olivia ended it. "As a federal agent, I'm obligated to report these crimes. This evidence is going to the DA and IRS." Nancy's last plea: "Please, I'll pay it back. Just don't ruin my life." It was too late. Nancy thought she was untouchable. In a week, she lost everything: arrested, disgraced, and stripped of power. Willowbrook was free. Sometimes, battles come to your doorstep, and some are worth fighting.